Now, I wanted to do this video real quick in response to all the trolls who keep wanting to throw Newton's third law at me. I'm not questioning Newton's third law. Newton's third law is applicable to an oxygen-rich environment, i.e., the Earth. Okay? Are you failing to understand that Newton's third law originates and comes from an oxygen-rich environment? That's where it was derived. Does that fact escape you? That now 500 years later, these people are trying to apply it to a situation that is the complete opposite 180-degree turn from an oxygen-rich environment. Now you want to use words like force and exert, but what you fail to understand that no force and no exertion can be achieved in an infinite vacuum universe billions of light years across. I'm going to leave the billions of light years out because an infinite vacuum universe says it all. It's infinite, has no end. Okay? You cannot achieve force. You cannot exert anything. You cannot exert something upon nothing. Why does that evade you? I understand that these people are telling you this is possible. I understand that they back it up with what I call propaganda. Star Wars, Star Trek, Space Invaders, a lot of movies showing rockets and ships traversing outer space. Okay? I understand that they show real live rockets blasting off, but they do a heavy arc and fly back down, but for some reason they switch to animation, CGI, and you guys think the rocket is in outer space, even though the camera is affixed and showing you a red hot thruster or booster, and you guys like and love that. I understand that this is not, sometimes the truth is just not popular, and ridicule will ensue. I understand that most of you are so dumbed down that to even try to process this could result in a system overload, or what the medical profession calls a cranial aneurysm. So if that was what I faced, I think I would choose to not try to process it and ridicule it and just say Newton's third law. Now I got people telling me that if an object, the rocket, exerts a force, a second object, the fuel, away from rocket, the second object exerts the same force in opposite direction of first object, being the rocket or the fuel against the rocket. Now, again, Newton's laws of motion derive from the Earth, an oxygen-rich environment. And now, 500 years later, they're calling the heavens above the Earth an infinite vacuum universe, which is an infinite area of nothing, no air. All right? So, you keep using words like force and exertion or exert. Do you not understand that this thing is surrounded by nothing? And whatever it puts out suffers the same fatality. It is not the same as on the Earth. Okay? On the Earth, a rocket or missile will get forward momentum from this second force exerting a force in the opposite direction, making it go that way, because this is exerting a force based on what it's pushing off, the air. All right? Now, in an infinite vacuum universe, this has nothing to brace on or push off, to offer resistance or to exert off of. This is one body, and it all constitutes one body that is being surrounded by an infinite vacuum of nothing. Okay? The vacuum of outer space is completely devoid of air. And again, I remind you that birds flap their wings on the air for an equal and opposite reaction in the opposite direction, and they fly. Okay? The insect, the fly, cannot achieve any flight. No matter what action it does, there can be no equal and opposite reaction because there's nothing to provide reaction. No reaction can be attained here because there's nothing for this stuff to push off, to provide force, to produce an exertion. It can't in of itself. How can it do it in of itself? It's not fixed. It's surrounded by an infinite vacuum universe. Therefore, this is not fixed. It cannot brace on itself. Do you understand that? This cannot do anything for that because they're one body and they all suffer the same fatality of the conditions of being within an infinite vacuum universe of nothing. All right, so I don't want people telling me, oh, you don't understand Newton's laws. Yes, I do. I learned them. I know them my whole life. And they do work in an oxygen-rich environment because this fuel can exert force off the air that it pushes on. This can offer nothing, just like that can't either. It's surrounded by an infinite vacuum universe. So no force or exertion can be achieved in this type of environment. Newton's laws were derived from an oxygen-rich environment on the Earth 500 years ago. Now they're coming 500 years later with all this garbage, and you are instantaneously believing it because you have to. You can't do anything else. You can't go to school and question this. You won't pass. But don't come here and tell me I don't know what I'm talking about when what I say is demonstrable. And here they got the Earth, this magic ball, covered in 5 layers in gas and oxygen, trillions of gallons of water, surrounded by an infinite vacuum universe. And you're going to tell me that I'm wrong? That gas and oxygen on the Earth will not immediately fill a vacuum when it's near the proximity of a vacuum? Then you're lying to yourself. And my previous videos go over why the theory of gravity is fictitious and why they have to say, however, if we are to be honest, we don't know what gravity is in any fundamental way. It's because they can't directly detect it to find out anything fundamental about it itself. There is no current, field, wave, beam, ray, or particle of gravity itself. That's why it's a 500-year-old theory. But if you sit in school and college, they talk about it like it's an absolute fact. And it is not. It is a 500-year-old theory. And the only reason you believe in it so faithfully is because you actually think you're on the outside surface of a giant ball. And if I thought that too, no one could tell me that a force wouldn't be required to keep me there, or an occurrence. Do you understand? I agree. If you were on the outside surface of a giant ball spinning faster than a bullet at the equator, a force or occurrence would absolutely be required to keep you on it. I understand that. Okay? But do you also understand that if you did live on this, and a force or occurrence would be required, that it could never be a theory? They could never say, when you ask Google, what don't we know about gravity? They could never respond. However, if we are to be honest, we don't know what gravity is in any fundamental way. That is the correct definition of illogical. The force or occurrence would be absolutely real, more real than electricity and magnetism combined. And the fact is, it's not. It's a theory. It's a very old theory. It's never been directly detected itself. Do you understand itself? Not what they say it's doing or how it behaves, but it itself. How does gravity itself engage, engulf, or interact with everything it's supposedly curving, pulling, or holding down to the center of that ball? What presence and substance of any known means of propagation does it employ? Because they can't find it. If they do find it, it'll make the front page. People will get Pulitzers. Do you understand that? Gravity is a 500-year-old theory because it has no presence and substance of itself to directly detect. That would be illogical if we really did live on the outside surface of a giant ball spinning faster than a bullet at its equator. All right, and then we got time-lapse star trails that focus on Polaris, the North Pole star that they call North Pole star, and they're perfect circles over the Earth. And they say, well, that proves the Earth is spinning. Really? Well, what about that other movement they say goes on simultaneously and is 66 times greater than its rotation? There could never be circular star trails above the Earth centered on North Pole star Polaris if the Earth was also traveling over 66,000 miles every hour around the sun. Don't you understand that? So if Google says, well, the stars are so far away that movement of the Earth is minuscule, and you instantaneously believe it. Then I tell you that 1 trillion seconds would take over 30,000 years to count to, but we can see Polaris at over 400 light years or 300 plus light years away, with each light year 6 trillion miles. And you think you could see 100 trillion miles? And all you got to do is go to Google and they say, the reason you can see Polaris is it's just so big. And you just abandon logic and go ahead and instantaneously believe it. And that makes no sense. You could never even see 1 trillion miles away. But, again, I'm stupid because they say you can. And I try to offer and enter therein logic. But this logic makes no sense to you because you don't know what logic is. How can you when you instantaneously believe everything they say? Now, if you Google per a Fox news release, science wants to move the Earth, Sun, and solar system, all the planets, to another location in space to avoid killer asteroids, maybe you might understand the depth you are being mocked. And they do this because they know you have no choice but to instantaneously believe them because, and I mean no offense, but all your inner and personal character has been drilled out of you. You have none to rely on, okay? What people do today is all they care about is material things or keeping up with the Kardashians. We got people that don't even know why the 4th of July is celebrated. You could show them a dollar bill and ask the name of the man on that dollar bill and they wouldn't know, unbeknownst to them, that the guy's name is right under his face. They still wouldn't be able to tell you who was on the dollar bill. That's because we've been systematically dumbed down by propaganda. Now, you can use the word exert and force all you want, but that don't have nothing to exert upon or within to offer resistance. This body and that body are one body surrounded by an infinite vacuum universe. In an oxygen-rich environment, this could push off the air and offer resistance. It could exert a force back upon that because it itself would push off the surrounding air. It cannot, if it's weightless, what is it bracing off to offer resistance to go back towards that rocket? If it's coming out this way, if that rocket is spewing, ejecting, and spraying hot gas fuel and whatever you want to call it that way, how is a force being enacted back this way? How is this going out that way, pushing this thing that way? When this going out that way don't have nothing to push against to stop it so it can brace itself and offer any exertion whatsoever. How is that? How is that occurring? I can tell you how that occurs in an oxygen-rich environment, because the rocket or plane ejects this burn and the burn pushes against the air. And that's how it becomes fixed. So this goes forward. Newton's laws of motion do not apply in an environment void of oxygen, because Newton's laws derive and were put forth based on things that happen in an oxygen-rich environment 500 years ago. This is nonsense. Do not tell me that this thing can spray that out, and then this in of itself, surrounded by an infinite vacuum universe, can turn around and push back on it. Because this don't have nothing itself to push on, to push back on that. You need to think about that. If you want to know the truth, you need to. And I know it's gonna be like the whole roof caving in on you. But I say rejoice. Know your true reality. And know that when oxygen and gas come into contact with a vacuum on the earth, the gas and oxygen fill that vacuum. There is no question about that. And you think that a theoretical force could overturn? I don't know what presence and substance it would use to overturn an infinite vacuum universe billions of light years across. How that oxygen could stay on the outside surface of that ball based on a 500-year-old theoretical force or occurrence they've never directly detected, that they will admit they don't know what gravity is in any fundamental way. They can't, because they can't directly identify it itself to tell you what gravity is. And you people, good for you. You believe what you want. See where it gets you in life. You do that.